Hello, this is Michael, atheist and alcoholic. I am attempting 90 AA meetings in 90 days. Nothing discussed in these videos will ever undermine the anonymity of AA. So, I'm going to leave the big book aside tonight for several reasons, not the least of which is whenever I have a really good meeting like I just did, I kind of want to keep the video positive to reflect that. Also, tonight was meeting 25, and there was supposed to be a lead. It didn't work out, so it was a very small group, and someone suggested maybe we just do mini leads, everybody tell your story, how AA has helped you. Yeah. And in Smart Recovery, this type of sharing is tends to be discouraged. They don't want to encourage people to share war stories, and I get it because there is a danger of it lapsing into people just romanticizing the past, or people even competing who had it worse. But that didn't happen at all, and I can see the value in it because I feel a lot closer to the 6 or 7 people that were in the meeting. I think there's value in just getting to know people. I think that helps to build a community. There's also value in no matter what your situation is, you are not a unique alcoholic snowflake. Even if your situation, you don't see somebody with your exact situation, there's so much overlap, especially when multiple people are sharing, that I think that's helpful in and of itself. So also, I've been complaining that I haven't went over my history yet, so that seems relevant for this video. That was my share tonight, and there may have been some benefit to doing some bullet points. I know that as soon as I finish this video, there's going to be things I forgot, but plenty more videos to come. I can interject anything I forget to talk about now in later videos. So, like many alcoholics, I did not have a good childhood. I was subject to some, witnessed to far more abuse, physical and otherwise. My older sister took the brunt of it, but just witnessing it fucks you up too. Marginally removed from homelessness at times, I learned about hunger and way kids shouldn't. And all of that gave me a shit ton of emotions that I didn't want to feel, and unmanageable anger. So as soon as I realized that you don't have to feel anything you don't want to, there's a solution to that, it was kind of off to the races. And I was drunk for the first time before I was a teenager for sure. But through my teen years, the drinking was something approximating normal, if there's such a thing with teenage drinking. I think so. But I drank, but it was pot that I needed every night. That was what really grabbed me. Kind of wish that never changed. But somewhere in my very early 20s, late teens, early 20s. I don't know if I changed or if pot changed. Pot might have just been getting stronger around then. That would have been the early 2000s. But it started making me twitchy and paranoid, so there was never a point at which I decided I have to quit pot in the way I decided I have to quit alcohol. It just kind of phased out. No void to be filled because alcohol took its place instantly. Started with just beer. I think Natty Ice was my go-to, and maybe 40s at first, then multiple 40s, then a 6-pack every night, worked up to 12 packs. And eventually I had to drink so much Natty Ice when I was buying a case at a time. I don't know what I would drink in a night, 14, 15 maybe. Maybe not even that much, but it was fucking with my stomach. So I started buying higher ABV beer, and I became a beer connoisseur. At that point, I don't think I thought I was an alcoholic at that point. I had a fucking spreadsheet. I just came across that not too long ago. Several hundred different beers. My thing were imperial stouts and imperial porters. 10% ABV or better on some of them. Was it Dogfish had 120-minute IPA, which was expensive. I didn't have it too many times, but that was 20% ABV. So I got real into it. I was on Beer Advocate. But eventually, I had to drink so much of the higher ABV stuff that started fucking with my stomach as well. And that's when I found whiskey. And initially it was just a supplement, to get me started, maybe half a pint. And I think the whiskey, if I remember correctly, it was either once the whiskey started or even before that the drinking started getting dark. I became extremely explosive when drunk. I never struck out against my better half, physically hit her. That would have happened exactly one time and she would have been gone. She still left multiple times because of the just mass destruction. If you were a piece of drywall or a piece of furniture or a television or a microwave or a chair, anything inanimate in my house, you were in trouble if I went on a drunken rampage. The amount of shit I destroyed is disturbing, shameful. It was insane. And that was around 2011, where on one particular night I went on an extreme rampage, and my better half, she was fucking done. We'd been together since we were 15, and she's looking for apartments. So I decided, I'm quitting. I'm going to AA. I'm never drinking again. I made all those promises, and I meant them at the time. And then I did white knuckled 2 years. I did AA for a little bit. It was not for me for the obvious reasons. Found Smart Recovery. Got to a good place with Smart Recovery, and then I just got busy. Stopped being involved in recovery in any aspect. And then in 2013, when I had been struggling, like that was the worst 2 years of my life. Every day felt worse than the last, and I never thought it was going to get better. I didn't know that it eventually would. But in 2013, I got an email confirming that I'd worked so hard to get into physical therapy school, and I came from nothing. So the fact that I even went to college at all and then managed to get into that, it was a competitive program, and I was in it, but I couldn't afford to pay them. It was like $6 or $7 grand that I needed to pay on top of the student loans that I didn't have. So I had to drop out for a year. They worked with me, and I didn't have to repeat any classes. I could come back the following year and just pick up where I left off. But that was it. Like, I was already struggling, and I went, and I think I just got a 6-pack that night, and it was the best night I had in 2 years. But now I'm hiding it. So I think that the whiskey had already started before 2011, before I quit, at least little amounts. But now, after 2 years sober, and I'm drinking again, I have to hide it. So whiskey was the go-to. It's much easier to hide one bottle of whiskey versus multiple bottles of beer. They're going to clang when I'm trying to get them out and whatnot. So it started with just a pint of whiskey at a time, and then several pints. And then if I knew that I could get rid of the empties, maybe a pint and a 6-pack, and it just kept escalating. Like I said, it's 2 things I learned about alcoholism for me personally is it only moves one way. And what was the other thing? There's no bottom. You may eventually find your rock bottom that you've decided that's enough, but you can always go lower. So those are the 2 things I learned. And I'm all over the place. I apologize. The first time I learned that it only moves one way was actually in the mid-2000s, before my alcoholism started getting really bad. I think it was about a 12 pack a night then. And I had some serious health problems. I had to get a bone marrow transplant. I'm fine now. But for the bone marrow transplant, I decided to quit for 6 months and I would drink again on my birthday. That was planned. And my birthday came around. And I thought, fuck, I haven't drank in 6 months, 3 or 4 beers. I'm going to be smashed. But no, I killed that 12 pack as if I hadn't missed a day. And that surprised me the first time. But that became a pattern. No matter what amount of sobriety I had, how long it had been between binges, the binges continued to escalate. So when I had, I had been up to about a liter of whiskey when I initiated 3 years of consistent sobriety, and we lost our German Shepherd unexpectedly. I took her to be cremated and immediately picked up half gallon of booze. It took me a little longer to kill it, about a day and a half instead of a day, but I was also 40 or 50 pounds lighter. So yeah, it for me, the tolerance didn't go anywhere at all. The tolerance stayed no matter how long I went. Um, so where did I leave off? Did my first 2 years of sobriety. I'm hiding it. The whiskey continued to escalate until I got back into the PT program. That was a fucking nightmare. I mentioned I had a bone marrow transplant. If I had to repeat, if I had to either repeat the bone marrow transplant, knowing I'd be okay at the end of it, or that PT program again, bone marrow transplant hands down. It was a fucking nightmare, and not because of none of the material is particularly impossible. The volume, it's a lot of volume, but the way the program, I could go on about that. Suffice it to say, very stressful. We did not have class on Wednesday, so every Tuesday was Whiskey Tuesday. And it was in that phase that I'd worked up to a fifth of whiskey every Tuesday night. And at some point, a fifth of whiskey wasn't enough. So it was a fifth of whiskey and maybe a bottle of some good beer that I used to drink, and then it became a fifth of whiskey plus a 6 pack. And then I just started getting liters of whiskey. Somewhere around then, the whiskey started fucking with my stomach as well. Just a nightmare the next day. So I found vodka. Problem solved. Vodka never fucked with my stomach the way that whiskey did, or that beer did, even worse, but that escalated the withdrawal. I didn't even know that you could get withdrawal if you weren't a daily drinker. The first time it happened, I was just like, why are my hangovers lasting 4 days? I'm getting it's weird that I got the flu right after drinking. Like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I had auditory hallucinations. I had the feeling of the tactile hallucinations, feeling of bugs. And I knew, I knew there weren't bugs crawling over me, but I clearly felt them, and I had no idea what the fuck was going on until I looked into it further. And that's the other thing that continues to escalate. I learned about something called kindling. The body, alcohol is an extremely effective depressant. So all of your anxiety neurochemistry is just fucking squelched when you drink. And to simplify it, the body is like, no, you fucking idiot. You need anxiety to stay alive, so it produces more. That's an easy problem to solve. You just drink more and squelch that down too. Well, it'll keep producing more. You suddenly cut off that alcohol. Everything is in hyperdrive, so you get the accelerated heart rate, the elevated blood pressure, the sweats, the shaking, and the hallucinations, ultimately seizures. So the process of kindling is that your body actually gets better at doing that every time. So not only can you have withdrawal as a true binge drinker, which I became after my first 2 year stint with sobriety. I never really went back to daily drinking. The closest I came was the once a week during PT school. So not only can you have withdrawal as a binge drinker, but it's actually, you're more prone to kindling, because daily drinkers tend not to quit that often. They go through withdrawal fewer times. Binge drinkers go through withdrawal more frequently. The withdrawal just gets worse and worse every time. So found vodka, and at first, fifths of vodka, maybe some vodka and some whiskey, that was enough. I worked my way up to handles, and that's when things get really, really fucking dark. That's where we die. And it was tough because prior to 2011, even though I didn't get in trouble, I wasn't driving, I didn't like to go out and drink because I didn't want to be a nuisance. It was tough for Susie because if I would go out, I was very good at having just a couple beers. And people would, Susie would tell people, he's got a fucking problem. And they wouldn't understand. It's like, I seen him out. He had 2 beers. It was like, yeah, but I had, a case waiting for me at home of high ABV stuff or maybe whiskey at that time. I wasn't going to go out and having a couple beers without being able to get absolutely blackout drunk once I got home. So after that first 2 years of sobriety, I became even better at compartmentalizing it. I realized that I couldn't get destructive around the house, not only because that's the right thing to do, but because I was hiding it. So I would only drink when I had the house to myself in some capacity. The old lady, she worked nights at the time, so it made it easy. I didn't go out. I don't know if I'm as much disciplined as I am extremely compulsive, and I've managed to channel those compulsive tendencies into something resembling discipline. But I knew that I could never control the amount that I'm going to drink once I start drinking. However, I was very good at controlling the environment leading up to that, knowing that I had to make sure I had nothing to do the next day or next several days, that I had enough to make sure I wasn't going to leave the house again. Um, and it almost made it harder to quit because it was, aside from the fact that the withdrawal escalated every single time, there were no other real life problems. I was doing all the right things in life. I'd go on a bender, and after the withdrawal subsided, and again, I'm all over the fucking place, but my metric for knowing how far through withdrawals became, I've been through it so many times, I knew that it was my typing speed was my main measure, my main metric for how close to I was being done with the withdrawal. Typically, my fat, stubby fingers can type about 70 words a minute. Not super accurate, but fast. During the worst of withdrawal, it's literally 1 key per second at most. I can't, the automaticity is gone. I have to look at each key to type. And as that starts getting better, I know I'm getting through the withdrawal. The very last time I drank was a week-long bender. At least it might have been closer to 10 days, where I'd been working crazy amount of hours, just taking everything. I function like an independent contractor. I don't have to say yes to everything, but I did. I just said yes to everything. And then I was doing that for far too long, and then just suddenly there was this gap where there was no work for at least a couple days, and then I knew that I could refuse anything that came in when I'm deep in the shit. And the family was out of town. So I just had this opportunity, and I fucking went for it. And that was the first time I ended up in the hospital for withdrawal. I was in seizure territory. I have video that maybe I'll share this, or I haven't done any edits yet, but maybe I'll figure out how to just splice some of those videos. I had the wherewithal to document that bender from time to time. I would just talk into the camera. And I took a video of me attempting to brush my teeth when I first went into the hospital. And I was able to get the toothbrush into my mouth, but as soon as I would start trying to brush my teeth, my arm would just go like a fucking jackhammer. Like I couldn't do it. It's kind of comical to see, but was terrifying at the time. Like I had that little motor control. I couldn't even brush my fucking teeth. Like my jacket had the toothpaste stains on it for quite some time after that, so I finally washed it. So The share was shorter. It was truncated when I shared it with them regarding my drinking history. I think that about sums it up. I told them that I did use smart recovery uh, to get sober. However, and my sobriety is currently in a good place, but I've always been interested by the structure of the 12 steps and the community that they've built. The fact that they have the sponsors. I think the war stories fucking add to it. You know, smart recovery, as much as I love smart, it's been around since the 90s. You know, it's one of the comparisons I was going to make in another video is that, yeah, smart, you know, I feel that AA has more community, but everything I had to do with smart recovery was almost entirely online, especially the second time I really got involved in smart recovery. Um, but that's because AA is more prolific. You know, smart recovery hasn't been around as long as AA, but it's been around since the 90s. And there's just not the meat. And maybe it's where I live. Maybe in other areas it's better. But yeah, they really do community right. Um, there's great people at these meetings. And in order to, like I've said before, in order to give it a fair shake, I do need to do the 12 steps. Um, Kind of just tapered off. So that's all I have for tonight. If I forget anything, if I think of anything I forgot about my drinking history that's relevant, I'll include in the next videos. So thank you for listening. Sorry I ran on so long. Have a great night, and I'll see you guys here again tomorrow.